yesterday, Matt LaFleur once again asked about Jaire Alexander. We'll talk about that. We got a little tiny, itsy-bitsy, like a little touch, little information about swelling in his knee. And Matt LaFleur essentially saying, without flat out saying, it's Jaire Alexander who's deciding whether or not he's playing or not. In fact, let's not. I really wanted to get to changing my perspective on this team, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Let's not bury the lead. Here is Matt LaFleur yesterday. I believe Rob Domofsky was the one who asked the question about whether there's a difference of opinion between what the team thinks.
Do you guys draw straws for who asks about Jaire each day? And Rob's like, shoot, it's me today. And
not officially. But we have found that Bill Huber has been the first guy through the wall more frequently than not, and he, as they say in Moneyball, the first one through the wall gets bloodied.
Is he your sacrificial lamb?
No, he chooses. He likes being the leadoff hitter. He is our Paul Molitor or Ricky Henderson, R.I.P.
R.I.P.
He's not quite as. His batting average is not quite as high as Ricky's or Paulie's, but he tries really hard, and sometimes it doesn't go great. Yesterday, he did ask the lead question about Jaire, and then Rob followed up. Here is how Matt LaFleur handled that.
Do you think there's any chance you'll have Jaire at all the rest of the season?
Yeah, I don't know. As soon as I know, I'll let you guys know.
That's not true. He won't let you know right away.
Like a difference of opinion between what he thinks his health is and what you guys think it is?
Yeah, I can't really get into all that. I do know that he's been dealing with swelling, and he doesn't feel right to go out there and play.
Bum, bum, bum. Tausch, he's been dealing with swelling, and he doesn't feel right to go out there and play. Mm-hmm. Your interpretation of how that was answered.
I think Matt LaFleur and some folks within the coaching staff probably feel like he should be out there playing. But I, as a former player, I'm always going to look at it from that perspective. And here's the deal, guys. We judge guys, and I've said this numerous times. I respect when guys fight through and get out there and play. But then if you don't finish the game or you don't play well, you're going to be judged on if you're playing at full health. That is the reality of football. The coaches know, and if your 80% is better than the guy behind you's 100%, does that make it that you need to go out there and play? Mm-hmm. I think Jaire obviously is a competitor and wants to play, but I think he's also been through enough now. These injuries will mess with you mentally. You constantly have to battle through and figure out how you can get out there and play. And as you get older, and maybe you don't have that, you've been scarred a little bit. I just feel like Jaire is at that point in his career where he thinks if he can't be who he wants to be out on the field, he's not going to go play. And it's easy for all of us to say, well, there's a little swelling. Oh, well, you got to fight through some of this stuff. It's the playoffs, baby. It's this. And it's very easy to say that. It's another thing to actually have to go out there and then you have to cover Justin Jefferson, knowing I can't do everything I want, and I'm going to maybe not even be helping the team. So there's just a lot that goes into this equation. It's not as simple as saying, well, Doc saw the scan. It looks good. He's able to practice. He's able to do this. So from Jaire's, mindset, I understand where he's coming from. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of times, I said a couple weeks ago, this reminds me a lot of the D-Box situation where I think coaches and front office folks just have an idea of if you can go, you go. And especially guys that are high paid. And I think the players now are looking at it more from the perspective, it's more business, but it's also more, I don't trust that if they always say this, you know your body best. Mm-hmm. Trainers will tell you that. Coaches will say, And if a player isn't 100% confident, that means they're not going to go. Because players will always push that envelope the other way. Yep, I can do it. Yep, I can go. And coaches will take that and say, yes, let's do it, until you only take 10 snaps and somebody that's super healthy is sitting there in street clothes that could have been out there playing when you're 3 snaps in and you're sitting there icing your knee down. That's what's happened here, in my opinion. And I think now there's no trust. And the trust is not on either side. Mm-hmm. And like in any relationship, partnership, if you don't have that, then everything is looked at from a different perspective, and none of it's good. And I would be surprised if Jaire plays again this season.
I guess this was better than nothing, right? At least we got a little bit of information. And I was talking to Jen, Gabe, and Chewy. Well, actually, just Gabe and Chewy. Jen wasn't on today. Excuse me.
Choked up.
I get very emotional when I talk about Jaire Alexander. And Gabe made the point that it might be unfair to compare the Bakhtiari situation with Jaire's because, A, the knee injuries aren't the same, and B, eventually David Bakhtiari stood at his locker for 45 minutes and detailed every single tiny little piece of his knee saga, right? Gave us all kinds of medical terms and the whole deal, and Jaire hasn't done that. And my point to Gabe was, and I think this was your point a second ago, is that the way it's being talked about or not talked about is in the same way.
Oh,
right?
No doubt
there is
about
a underbubbling of frustration and irritation. And I thought Rob did an outstanding job of asking the question as, is there a difference of opinion? I thought that was a really smart choice of phrase there because it got LaFleur to basically, from what I gathered, kind of admit that there is, right?
Yeah.
Like, He admitted it without really saying, yeah, there's a difference of opinion. And so this is the kind of stuff that I am curious because when Keyshawn Nixon has talked about this or when Xavier McKinney has talked about this, they have both said, well, he's hurt. There's nothing he can do. Okay? Yeah. Those guys have his back on this. But is that out of loyalty or is that out of a belief that he legitimately cannot play? Or what is that? Because you know as well as I do, and the former quarterback was among them, there are guys that are old school that don't think in terms of, hey, I'm not going out there if I'm not 100%. You know, the Devondre Campbell, I'm not playing through injury anymore. There are guys on the other side that are like, get your ass out there. We need you. Play through it. Tough it out. And I know there were times when Rodgers was frustrated with certain players, including Zadarius Smith in 21, about them not playing hurt. So how in the locker room, is it universal that all guys are supportive? Is it a different era? Or do you think that there are some guys that privately are going, man, we really need him. I don't understand why he's not playing through this and not even giving it a shot again.
Yeah, it's a different era. It's a different era of football, and I think as the money gets bigger and the scrutiny, as I've told you, the scrutiny now is crazy. Like the amount of scrutiny on NFL players is. I am so glad my career ended when it did. It was just getting into it. It adds so much more to being an NFL football player. So players are going to have players' backs on this. They should, because really nobody else does.
Right.
And as a group, you need to understand. And guys know the difference. If it's something that players feel like they can play through publicly, you never talk about other guys' injuries anyways. So that's
right.
It's contracts and that you steer clear of. You talk about yourself and you talk about the team. There's no doubt. I'm sure there's some guys in that locker room that are saying, man, if Jaire would have been out there, maybe Sailor Nailor doesn't get open on that. There's always going to be that. There's always going to be those things that get in play. But by and large, I think the locker room is going to support their teammates because it's not as if everybody thinks Jaire just doesn't want to play. If Jaire was healthy, he'd be out there playing. Is he healthy enough to play. And when you start going down that game, I think you better really be careful if you're going to be a critic. You better have all your T's crossed and I's dotted, because that is a dangerous game that I know as an analyst I'm not going to play. All I'm going to do is look at the scenario, listen to what is being said, and what it makes me think is there is a lack of trust amongst the parties involved to feel like there's going to be any real movement on this until Jaire is sprinting full speed and feeling awesome. And I don't know if that's going to happen this late in the season.
Well, the Packers closed the regular season on Sunday at noon against the Bears.
No, Jesse told me they're playing Saturday. It was flexed.
Yeah, I was hoping Jesse would be right about that.
I'm glad he was. Why would
we're
you
all
want to play
hoping
on
Jesse
Why
would
would
be
we?
right.
Why would we want a Saturday night game?
You love Saturday games. That's like you're always advocating for Saturday
Yeah,
games are the
other
best.
teams-
You get a day to recover. You get to go up. It's still a weekend. It's
I
great.
don't know if I appreciate your impression of me, Jesse. I'm
You
not
should have
sure.
heard the Coors read
Oh,
after you left.
yeah, here, let me do. You get to play on Saturday.
I don't
not bad.
fully comprehend that. It's pretty good.
Far away from there.
I know. I mean, sometimes yes. And I don't know when we want to get into this, but this idea of the NFL needing an 18th game, we need to nip that now, because we don't need 17 weeks, 18 weeks. What are we doing?
Wait, does
that's a
someone
whole
think
nother
we
thing.
need one other than the NFL to make
No,
more
it's
money?
going to happen. My point is, it shouldn't, and we should all be sitting here as fans saying, "All right, as you know, it'd be great. I would love for you as a leader in that press community."
Oh, boy.
To just say, you know what, guys, we've been sitting here. We missed the boat when it came to concussions. You've been very adamant that you were ridiculous in 96.
Yeah.
So as a group, what I would love for you all to do is to sacrifice a little too and say, all right, when the NFL does week 18, we're not going to cover it. We're going to go blank because it's ridiculous. I want you as a press group, get all your buddies together, Florio and the whole crew, and say, nobody's covering it. We're not doing it.
Get all your buddies together, and the first one you go with is Florio.
I'm going to say something kind of ridiculous here, and I don't know if I'm going to hold
Never
myself
happens
to
on
this.
this show.
If and when the NFL goes to the 18th week,
I'm going to take the week off.
we are not going to do a show on this airways with Wilde and Tausch. Now, if the powers that be think Rutledge and Hamilton and somebody else is going to step in, I can't control that. But as a group, and Jesse, if we're all three together still, and this will happen in probably 3 or 4 years, we're not doing it.
If we're
And I
all
think,
together
Jesse,
still.
this is the one thing I feel really confident Jesse will side with me on. Jesse, we're taking a week, okay?
What do you want to take, the final week or just a random week at some point in the season when you want to plan a
It's gotta be
vacation to be
week-
like,
it's-
that's our week that we're not doing it?
It's got to be week 18. And even if a scenario like what's happening with Minnesota and Detroit happens, which could be, we're taking a week.
This just
And
sounds
Jason,
like a weaselly way to get some time
Nelly!
off.
No, trust me, that's not it. I just think at some point somebody has to say, we've had enough. We don't need any more. This is good. So, we all on board?
I'm all on board with civil disobedience.
Well, it doesn't sound like it. It's gotta. It has to affect you too.
Yeah, it
can't
has to
just be everybody else. You know
Right,
what I
my
mean?
issue with your grand plan, which very rarely do I react the way I am now and then not come around, but I'm not coming around on this because the level of engagement we would have to get from the rest of the media industrial complex and fans, right? Don't we need fans not to go to the games for this to work? Don't we need TV partners to say, no, we're good, we don't need an 18th game to air on our airwaves? Don't we need advertisers to say, no, we'll put our money into WNBA games instead?
Start small.
Well, you would know about starting small given the video angle that we have of you. Look, I admire and I agree with you in principle. I don't think, especially if it's like the Packers next season are going into, or whenever we start with 18 games, going into week 19, needing to win to get the number 1 seed, and you've spent all season in 2026 saying it's the most important number 1 seed in football history now that there's 18 games and whatever else. I don't know if we're serving our fans by saying we're boycotting this week.